So it is easy to think of filmmaking as a huge impersonal machine run by studios simply churning out blockbuster films one after the other and collecting massive amounts of money for their pains. But you do run the risk of forgetting that the entire movie system is made up of people who are notoriously unpredictable. No matter how much they make arrangements for every contingency during pre-production, there is always the possibility, however slight, that something will happen to ruin all those carefully laid plans. And really, it's kinda scary when you think about how much money is depending on a bunch of fallible little humans. Sure, most of the time, things work out pretty much fine. Movies make it through the filmmaking process with their original cast intact. But sometimes, stuff, well, it happens. Actors get hurt, or actresses get pregnant. Or God forbid, the cast is disrupted by the serious but vague creative differences that always signify doom and gloom. And when these kind of things happen, well, production has no choice but to replace the actor. When they're lucky, the new actor has at least a little bit of time to prepare for such an important role, but sometimes they do not have that luxury. And in the case of the actors on this list, they sometimes only had a day or two to get themselves into the swing of things. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 8 unbelievable last-minute casting changes that saved movies. Number 8, Geena Davis, A League of Their Own. When you watch Geena Davis in A League of Their Own, she seems like she was born for the role of the beautiful, outrageously athletic baseball player who leads the Rockford Peaches to the finals. But she was actually a very late replacement, after Deborah Winger left the production. Officially, she quit the film because she was recovering from a back injury, but everyone knows she actually walked off the set once Madonna was cast in a supporting role. While the rest of the cast had months of baseball training to be able to play professional athletes, Geena Davis stepped in days before filming, and had very little time to not only learn the basics of the game, but to believably portray one of the greatest baseball players in America. That is a big ask. Despite all this, she quickly got a hang of baseball and was regularly beating her co-stars as they played throughout the filming process, proving once and for all that she is a superhuman specimen and should probably be cloned for the benefit of humanity. Number 7, Michelle Pfeiffer, Batman Returns. The casting of Catwoman was a process fraught with drama. To begin with, Sean Young, who had been cast as Vicky Vale in the previous film but had to be replaced because she broke her collarbone, was convinced that she deserved the role and began visiting production offices in a Catwoman costume demanding an audition. That's one way to go about it. Annette Bening was originally signed on for the movie, but just before production started, she had to drop out of the film after becoming pregnant. A host of other actresses were considered, but in the end, Michelle Pfeiffer stepped in at the last minute. All's well that ends well though, as Pfeiffer ultimately created a great and iconic Catwoman. Most people couldn't imagine someone better suited for the role. And when Anne Hathaway was cast in The Dark Knight Rises, the constant worry was how she was going to stack up in comparison to her illustrious predecessor. Now, she did do pretty well in the end too, but Pfeiffer remains the GOAT, or cat for many. Now, I've got a quick question for you. What do you think is the best piece of comic book or superhero movie casting of all time? Was it Pfeiffer as Catwoman or someone else? You let me know in the comments section down below. Number 6, Paul Dano, There Will Be Blood. When Daniel Day-Lewis signed on to play the lead role of Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood, he had an entire year to prepare, and it certainly shows. His Oscar-winning performance is nuanced, thoughtful, and not easy to read. But one of his co-stars had a much shorter time to get a handle on their character. Originally, Paul Dano was cast in the small role of Paul Sunday, with actor Kel O'Neill playing Eli Sunday, the preacher who makes an enemy of Daniel Plainview. But Kel O'Neill left the project 2 weeks into the shoot, with some saying he was intimidated by Day-Lewis's tendency to stay in character between takes. Although O'Neill, Day-Lewis, and director Paul Thomas Anderson all say that this was not the case. They ultimately decided to make Eli and Paul identical twins though, and Paul Dano was given the much more significant role of Eli, with only 4 days to do the amount of preparation that Daniel Day-Lewis was given a year to accomplish. Still smashed it. Number 5, Viggo Mortensen, The Lord of the Rings. For most people, Viggo Mortensen is the perfect embodiment of one of Tolkien's greatest characters, Aragorn. Now, the entire The Lord of the Rings series is marked by exceptional casting, but Viggo definitely stands out as particularly great, which makes it really hard to believe that he wasn't actually the first person cast as Aragorn. Originally, Stuart Townsend took on the role, but left the project the day before principal photography was set to start when Peter Jackson decided that he came off as too young. If you read interviews with Townsend about it, it is immediately clear that there was very little love lost between him and the production team. So it was probably for the best that he was let go before he poured a couple of miserable years into the films. But one man's loss is another man's gain. And although Mortensen was originally reluctant to take on such a long and high-profile project, he eventually flew out to New Zealand and joined the already bonded cast at the very last moment, and the rest was legendary history. Cheers for checking out this last-minute casting list today, my friend. Now smash that subscribe button down below for more of this What Culture stuff in your day. Number 4, Mark Wahlberg, The Lovely Bones. Ryan Gosling has always been the sort of actor who has very definite ideas about the characters that he's gonna portray. He likes to give them little quirks to help them really become flesh and blood people, rather than just words on a page. So it's not exactly surprising that when he was cast to play the father in The Lovely Bones, he showed up to the set with a heavy beard and about 20 extra pounds on his normally quite lean frame. He felt that the character should have a little extra meat on his bones. But director Peter Jackson, as it turned out, could not disagree more, and was incensed that he made such a drastic decision without discussing it with him first. Yeah, I bet that was an awkward conversation. Gosling was then promptly fired from the film, and Mark Wahlberg, having just recently finished filming The Happening, was available to take over the role just one day before production began. Number 3, Claudia Wells, Back to the Future. At this point, pretty much everyone already knows that Eric Stoltz was the original Marty McFly in Back to the Future. He was replaced about halfway through filming because he was too serious for the role. Yeah, that's old news. But fewer people know that when Stoltz was let go, the original Jennifer was also fired from the film. Melora Hardin from the US office had been cast as Stoltz's love interest, but was recast when Michael J. Fox joined the film. Apparently, she was just too tall to play opposite Fox, and Claudia Wells was brought in to take over when they began shooting the film again. Ironically, when it was time for them to make the second and third films in the series, Wells was in turn passed over for Elizabeth Shue, who then played Jennifer for the rest of the trilogy. So many Jennifers. Number 2, Sofia Coppola, The Godfather Part III. There has been a lot of nasty talk about Sofia Coppola's performance in her father's The Godfather Part III over the years, but to give her a little bit of credit, she was never really meant to play the role of Mary Corleone, Michael's daughter. First, Julia Roberts was cast, but she had to drop out because of scheduling conflicts. Rebecca Schaeffer was rumored to be up for the role, but was brutally gunned down before negotiations were started. And finally, Winona Ryder was cast as Mary, but then she dropped out at the last minute due to exhaustion. Casting his young daughter with no serious acting experience was an act of desperation, a desire to just have the role filled and done with. And unfortunately, she's had to listen to the criticisms of that performance for her entire life. In fact, people only really started to lay off once she established herself as a talented director in her own right. Number 1, Josh Dallas, Thor. Stuart Townsend has already appeared once on this list for getting replaced in a major blockbuster franchise, which is apparently the sort of thing that happens to him relatively frequently. You see, he was originally cast in Thor as Fandral, one of the 3 warriors that fight alongside Thor before he's exiled to Earth. Townsend left the project just before they began filming though, citing that old standby of creative differences as the reason for his departure, which could really mean anything from a fistfight with the director to craft services stocking the wrong kinds of lunch meat. That'd make me quit. After his departure, Josh Dallas was cast in the role. He was a relative unknown at the time, but has by now achieved a decent level of fame with his performance on ABC's Once Upon a Time. He was charming as Fandral, but when it came time to film the sequel, his television commitments meant that he had to pass on reprising his performance. And the role was recast once again, this time with Chuck star Zachary Levi. Have we missed any last-minute casting changes that save movies on this list? Well, if so, then you let me know about them in the comment section down below, and have yourself a wonderful day. Bye-bye!